And we're going to give our robot one motor. Now, if it's going to have a motor, just like it had a joystick, which means we need a what?
Variable.
We need a variable because we need somewhere to put the motor. So over here on line 18 where I've got my joystick, I'm going to add a motor. Now, one thing to be aware of, there's a lot of different kinds of motor. Joystick was pretty nice because a joystick is a joystick is a joystick. For motors, we got to be a little bit more specific. Let's do this motor. What kind of motor is this? Kraken X60. Here's the thing about that, though. What did we say about coding and motors?
Actuators.
They're actuators. What else did we say about coding and motors?
You can't talk to the motor directly.
You can't talk to the motor directly. I don't care this is a Kraken. I care that it uses a Talon FX. Because I'm not ever going to talk to the Kraken. I'm only going to talk to the Talon FX. So we're going to use what's called the PWM Talon FX. We're using PWM because that's the easier one to start with, and we have to specify that, otherwise it'll try to get the CAN one, and it doesn't know about the CAN one yet. I'm just going to call it motor. So if I go down to robot periodic, so I've got my motor variable. If I go down to robot periodic, I could put code here. I'm not going to, though. Why? Why would I not put motor code in robot periodic?
You want to do it whenever you're reading a value.
What do you mean by that?
Axis. So
Okay, okay.
I mean, I guess that would go in periodic if you're.
It would go into periodic, but why would I not put it in robot periodic?
Because that runs every time the robot's on.
Robot periodic is running constantly while the robot is on, including when the robot is disabled. Should you be controlling actuators when the robot is disabled? No, because you can't. It'll ignore all that. So you could put it in periodic. I don't think it would hurt anything, but it's a good practice not to put actuator code in robot periodic.
It's a safety. It's a safety thing
Control your
because
robot while it's disabled.
Yeah, it's a little bit risky. Like, I trust that it's not going to let it do anything, but I could be just a little bit safer by not giving it the opportunity.
Shouldn't it go in teleop periodic?
Why?
Because you're speaking to the motor
Mm-hmm.
thing directly instead of the motor.
Right.
Because teleop is when the person is actually controlling the robot, which is when you should be controlling.
So that's a good point. So I could put it in teleop periodic because I can use my joysticks in teleop. Now I could put it in auto periodic, but I would have to do some kind of calculation on figuring out like how fast to make it move. So because we're still working with joysticks, teleop periodic is a good option. So I'm gonna go find teleop periodic, get between the curly braces, and do that. So let's say I want to use something on my joystick to control how fast the motor goes. What would be a good thing to control how fast it goes?
The actual joystick.
One of the joysticks. So why not a button?
Because a button is a boolean, which is either true or false.
Right, button, Boolean, true or false. It means it's either doing one thing or it's doing another thing. I don't have that range of motion. So let's say we're going to use an axis. Which axis do we want to use? Trigger? I'm going to say no on the trigger. Very specifically. Who can tell me why I would say no to the trigger?
Can't go backwards.
You can't go backwards. So trigger's good if you're just wanting to explore, but like the trigger only goes one direction. Now, you can do things to make the trigger go forward or backwards, but it requires a little bit of math and is not as easy to do. So what's another option?
Joystick Y.
Joystick Y. We'll do left stick Y. So how do we get the value from the joystick?
It is double.
Double?
And then left stick X, Y.
Okay. Now how do I get it? my joystick. I want the joystick to do or tell me something.
You got raw axis, and then you find whichever axis is left stick Y.
And what is left stick Y? Anybody remember?
1.
1. So line 47, double left stick Y, my joystick dot get raw axis, axis 1. I have pulled out the value from the joystick. So now I'm going to use it. I'm going to do something. So what am I controlling?
Your motor controller.
My motor controller. What did I call my motor controller?
Motor.
I called it motor. So I'll do motor. If I want the motor to do or not tell me something, I have to use what symbol? If I want it to do or tell me something.
Dot.
Dot. Right. Object dot action. Now there's a few things on here for the PWM. In order to control the speed of the motor, we're going to use, for right now, we're going to use set. Pretty soon, you'll see why you probably won't ever use set again, but set is a useful to start with. So set is a speed, and here's the nice thing about speed. I'm going to switch over to the iPad to demonstrate this. With speed, the motor set method takes a value between -1 and +1. Where have we seen that before? On a joystick, specifically on the axis. So one of the things you can do is you can take the axis value and directly set that to the motor speed. Because 1 on a motor is full forward. -1 is full reverse. On a joystick, 1 is full forward, -1 is full reverse. So what I can do is in set, I can just plug in left stick Y into there. So I'm reading the value from the joystick up and down on the left joystick. Motor.set left stick X. All right, let's run the sim on this. And we can just run the regular sim. We don't need the driver station for this one. Now, when you run this, something's probably going to happen pretty early, but we'll see. We'll see. Okay, so I got the sim running. If I go check my code real quick, no problems there. If I look in the simulator, does anybody see, and I don't see it on mine either, so make sure you have the PWM open. So in the simulator, yeah.
There's a problem with my motor variable.
Okay, hold on to that for a minute. So we go to hardware, and we want to make sure that our PWM outputs are up. But I don't have PWM outputs on mine because I'm disconnected. So I'm going to make sure I switch over to disabled. Go to my hardware. Still don't have it. If I go to teleoperated, my simulation crashed. Why did my simulation crash? Let's read. What does it say? Robot program quit unexpectedly. This is usually due to a code error. Okay, let's look up. Okay. Error at teleop periodic line 48. Well, that's what I'm telling the motor to set. Unhandled exception. And what is this exception? What does this phrase mean?
There's nothing there.
There's nothing there. What do you mean by that?
Like, there's nothing in the actual, like,
Variable. Yeah. Null pointer exception means, hey, you made a box, but there's nothing in the box. Well, let's look at why that might be. All right, line 20, I made the box. Did I put anything in the box? So nothing in the box yet. Where would I put something in the box?
Teleop periodic.
I wouldn't do it in periodic.
Oh.
I could do it in init, but where would be a better place to put it than teleop init?
Robot in it.
Because
It initializes whenever the robot first starts.
there we go. So that's a way that you can always have access to it. And if I look here in line 28, I did make the joystick, did not make the motor or the motor controller. So New line, I'm going to say motor. How do I put something in the motor? How do I put something in the motor variable? Equals.
New
I got to use the word new.
PWM Talon FX.
PWM Talon FX. Oops, nope, not that. PWM Talon FX. And remember, that's a special method. What did we call that method? It starts with a C. It's the special method used to construct the object. So it's the constructor. There you go. And we'll call it channel 0. So one difference between PWM and CAN, PWM devices have to have a channel. CAN devices have to have an ID. We'll talk more about that when we get into CAN devices. But just like the joystick had to have a number to identify it, the motor has to have a number to identify it, because you could have multiple motors and you want to know which motor you're controlling. So now I'm going to try to simulate my code again. Simulate robot code. Build successful. Only SimGUI. And now, when you look into hardware, you should see the PWM outputs tab. So that's another example of making sure you look for those null pointer exceptions. Yeah.
My motor variable thing is so broken. It has the red line under PWM Talon FX.
Maybe you're missing an import. So you're saying yours looks like this. Let me make sure I got it. Boom, boom, boom. First off, did you spell it exactly like this? Okay, so I think what your problem is you don't have this line. So you're seeing this then, right? Okay, you may remember how to get rid of this problem? You put your cursor in the text and press Control period. And the first thing that should come up is an option to import.
That's it.
Yep.
Isn't there another way to do it? When you're typing it in, you can just click the tab.
Yep, so if I don't have that and I just start typing PWM Talon FX that's already highlighted, I can press enter, or I can click on it and that'll also do it as the auto import. Another good example here is you see I've got this yellow squiggle under this import. Yellow squiggles don't mean there's a problem, it just means, hey, are you sure about this? Because I'm not currently using Smart Dashboard. I imported it before because I was using Smart Dashboard, but right now I'm not using it. I'm gonna leave it because Smart Dashboard might come back. So I'm gonna re-simulate that. And while the sim is loading, does anybody have any other questions up to this point? Okay. So build, debug, Okay. So make sure you can see the PWM output, and also make sure you drag your controller into the joystick 0 position. So you should have in joysticks, joystick 0 is your controller. And then you should also have down here this PWM outputs window that shows one PWM. How are we controlling the motor?
Up and down.
Up and down which joystick?
Left joystick.
Okay, so if I push up, I should see that change. And I don't see the value change
So you're not running teleop right now.
because I'm not running teleop right now. We put this code in teleop periodic, so we need to make sure we're in teleoperated. So if I push up, I get -1. If I pull down, I get +1. Does that make sense? Or should it be the other way?
It makes sense because of, again, what you said, it originated from flight.
So we're just taking the value out of the joystick and putting it in. Well, up on the joystick is -1. So I'm telling the motor, hey, go backwards. What if I don't want to do that? What if I want the motor to go forwards when I press up? Well, the nice thing is, these are just numbers, right?
Switch them around.
So if I go to line 48, I can put a minus right there. Or I can go to line 49, and I can put the minus right there. The values, even though they are words, right, are numbers. Left stick Y is a number. So negative left stick Y is also a number. But what's probably less obvious is this right-hand side, right? This my joystick.getRawAccess1, that whole thing is a number, which means I can make that whole thing negative and it's still a number. So wherever you put the negative, as long as it's, a thing that makes sense and can be consistent, I would probably recommend putting it here. And I probably wouldn't call this left stick Y anymore. I would probably call this speed. How can I change the variable name?
F2.
F2, speed. And so now I'm using variables that mean something, right? I don't care where this value came from. I care what it's telling me. And it's telling me the speed. So now if I simulate this, I get SimGUI I go to teleoperated. I move my joystick up, now it's +1. Move my joystick down, it's -1. This value in the joystick table is showing you still what is the joystick doing. But this value in the PWM table is telling you what is the motor doing. All right, questions about that? Yeah, go ahead.
I think these joysticks have stick drift.
Yeah, they definitely have some drift.
Because mine is showing that it's still having an input.
Yeah, mine's showing -0.2 or 0.02 right now. So
Mine's 0.004.
these definitely have some drift in them, which is why they're used mostly for practice. Okay, questions about setting the motor speed?